I used to think that dinner time was one of the most stressful parts of my day because by the end of my workday, I would be physically tired, mentally exhausted, and then I would get crabby knowing that I still needed to go home and decide what we were going to have for dinner. And unfortunately, I was getting very familiar with the feeling of decision fatigue. But since I put my meal planning routine in place, I no longer have to stress about dinner time and it feels so good. As long as I stick to my meal planning routine, we're set. We don't have to worry about anything. So if you are still struggling with the dinner time decision rut, I want to share a few tips with you. These will work whether or not you have been able to implement your meal planning routine or not. I have 4 easy meal planning tips to help make it easier to decide what's for dinner.
Are you ready to stop the chaos, the stress, the overwhelm that's filling your life? I'm Renae Matt, and together you and I are going to build simple routines that are going to change your life. When you put these habits into practice, you're going to be able to organize your life in a way where you can be there for your family, pay off your debt, save money, your house can stay organized, you don't have to stress about what's for dinner, and you still get time for yourself. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the Routine Advantage Podcast.
There are so many things that we need to decide every day that when we can eliminate some of these things, it just helps to relieve some of that stress and it opens up more capacity to just think about other things and to enjoy the time rather than constantly being stressed about what comes next, like trying to decide what's for dinner. I feel like I'm a pretty easygoing person and I can kind of roll with a lot of things. I don't get mad or fly off the handle, but I do get pretty darn grumpy when it comes to dinner time if I don't know what to make and we're kind of down to the wire and I'm hungry and I'm tired and I'm sick of making decisions. I can get pretty grumpy and my husband can attest to that. I feel so bad for him when we get in a situation where we have not done our meal planning routine for the week and now we're struggling trying to figure out what's for dinner and neither one of us wants to decide. It's the worst. So it's not going to be perfect when you implement a meal planning routine, but when you can get it into place and have that more often than not, it's going to relieve so much stress. It's not about being perfect, it's just knowing what to do when it comes time to do it. And that is one of the things that you can do when you create your meal planning routine. So I do have some previous episodes that you can use to go back to actually build your routine. And I can just share those with you really quickly. But this episode is actually going to focus on 4 tips that aren't going to matter whether or not you have your meal planning routine set up. If you do, these will just help refine it a little bit more. But if you don't, it's totally okay. You can still use one or all of these tips, even if you don't have a meal planning routine set up yet. All right. So, first of all, if you want to go back and listen to those episodes with the meal planning, you can get episode 4 walks you through 12 steps for an easy meal planning routine to save time and money. Episode 19 is where we can actually walk through and create a meal plan together to give you kind of an idea. Episode 36 helps you to take a meal planning method to build quick and healthy weekly menus for your family. And episode 47 is where I walk you through my meal planning routine and you can use it step by step to make your own or just copy mine completely. It's totally up to you, but those episodes will help you if you need a starting point. So, when we go into our 4 meal planning tips to make it easier to decide what's for dinner, is number 1, create a favorites list. This is going to be just a piece of paper. You can put it in a notebook. You can hang it on the inside of a cabinet in the kitchen to make it super easy, wherever it is that you can just see it quickly. Just to make it easier, you can just grab this sheet of paper when it comes time to creating your meal plan. And it's just going to have a list of your family favorites. So this might be just favorite meals that your family really enjoys and you know that they will eat. It could be easy go-to dinners that you know you usually have these ingredients on hand, so it just makes it a really easy dinner to prepare. It could be just quick dinners that you know are in the freezer most of the time or whatever just works for you and your family. You're just going to brainstorm a list of favorites. And you just want this big list just so that when you need to create your meal plan, you can pull this out and you can have a list of ideas ready to go. It doesn't take long to create this list and you can sit down and do it yourself. You can also ask the members of your family if you're cooking for more than just yourself, ask them what they enjoy. What would they like on this list? And what would they like to see on the menu coming up? Because when they're a part of it, they're more likely to help out in certain areas. So this is something that you want to create and then just keep it handy. And anytime you want to add to it, you certainly can. So, this is just going to be a starting point that is very helpful when it comes to actually planning out your meals, especially if you feel like your brain is very tired when it comes to time to do your meal planning. The second thing is to use a wall calendar to meal plan. Now, you can use a whiteboard or a chalkboard or anything like that to create your meal plan. However, I have found that when you use a wall calendar, like a simple wall calendar, it's not only cheap, it's super cheap, but you can keep it out of sight if you don't like, your kitchen's cluttered your kitchen. I don't know why I did that plural. But if you don't like your kitchen cluttered or you don't like stuff on the wall, like a menu plan or anything like that, it's easy to just take a wall calendar and put a little 3M hook on the inside of your cabinet and hang the calendar in there. Or you can get, a fancy, pretty wall calendar and hang it up on the wall. Whatever you want to do, they are cheap and they're easy. And what is really cool about it is that it makes it super easy to just jot in your dinners. And also, if you are struggling to come up with more meals, all you have to do is look back at the previous months because once you do this consistently, you will have weeks upon months of meal plans at your fingertips at all times. And if you have a week and it goes really well and it's like this was a really good meal plan week, maybe like highlight it or circle it or put a star next to it like, hey, this is a good one to duplicate later if we're struggling and want to, do a meal plan that worked really well for us. Just make those notes as you go. But this is a really easy way instead of using a whiteboard where you're creating the meal plan and then erasing it, and then you have to come up with that whole meal plan all over again. Just create it on a wall calendar because then it will all be there and you're not erasing it every week. So this makes it really easy and it's so simple that it's easy to be consistent with it. The third tip is to pick a meal planning day. This is where you pick a day to make it a habit to plan ahead. Now, we personally like to do this on Thursdays just because Friday tends to be a little bit busier with doing our budget updates, and we don't really like planning things on the weekend if we don't have to. But sometimes if we don't get it done on Thursday, sometimes I do it on Monday, the following Monday, because I always do our shopping on Tuesdays. It just works that way for us because a lot of times we're not home on weekends or we just want quiet weekend where we're not running errands. The goal is to try and have everything done during the week so that we can really enjoy our weekends. So that's just how it works for us, but you have to decide what works for you. If it works really well for you to plan everything out and go do all your grocery shopping and prepping and everything like that on a Sunday, then go for it. If it works best to do it on a Thursday, do that. Like find what day works well, but try to stick to the same day if possible, because it's going to make it easier to create the habit to do this. So when you are looking at planning out your meals, it's always a good idea to plan ahead of time. It's so much easier to plan your dinners for the following week, and it's easier for me to plan an entire week worth of dinners as long as it doesn't have to be that night. That is what is stresses me out more than anything is I don't want to decide what is for dinner tonight because that's too close. It feels more stressful to have to do that. But I can look at next week and I can go and I can plan out all week worth of dinner, a week worth of dinners, and it's easier because the stress isn't there, the tight timeline isn't there, and it feels more doable to be able to do that. And then when I get into next week, I don't have to think about what's for dinner because it's already planned. I've already done the grocery shopping, it's prepped, it's ready to go, and all I have to do is just execute and cook. And then it's simple. So, not only do you want to pick a day to actually do the planning, but you want to do that consistently and then have it prepared. So, make sure when you're planning your week, have it be at least a couple of days, at least a full day ahead of time. So, if you are planning the week for Monday through Sunday, make sure you're doing it by Sunday to plan for Monday. Not only is it easier to plan ahead when you're not doing it for the night of, but it also gives you a chance to kind of look at the ingredients that you have. If you know that you still have leftover ingredients from the previous week that are still going to be in the fridge and you're going to need to use those up, then you can pick meals that are earlier in the week so you can finish using up those ingredients so less goes to waste too. So there are a lot of benefits to planning ahead of time, but I really like doing a week at a time. You can decide what works for you. Maybe it's 3 days at a time, maybe it's a full week, maybe it's even 2 weeks or a full month at a time. Just decide what works best for you. But when you can look ahead and plan everything out, it makes it so much easier than having to decide the night of. Just trust me on it. It's so much easier. Okay, and then the fourth tip is to double up wherever you can. And what I mean by this is when you are making a meal, try to make double batches for leftovers or freezer meal days or even extra proteins or things like that. So, for instance, if you are making chicken and you're like grilling chicken for just grilled chicken and some roasted vegetables for that night, look ahead. And if you have, chicken tortillas, or if you have, chicken tacos or chicken burrito bowls or something else that has chicken later in the week, as long as it's not, way far out in the week, you could make extra chicken and either just put it in the fridge or you can do it in the freezer if it's going to be more than a couple of days. Then just make your chicken in a bulk because you're already going through the process of making that chicken. So just make extra and then you already have it prepped and ready to go for the next meal later in the week. It makes it so much easier to just do more at one time and then it simplifies the meals later on. And the more you do this, the more you get used to doing this, you'll start to just automatically do this with other ingredients and it makes it so much easier. Another idea is to actually intentionally make more than you need for that night for several reasons. So if you are making, you know, lasagna for dinner that night, you could make an extra one and throw it in the freezer. And then you've got a freezer meal ready to go when you're running short on time or you don't know what to do on a different day, or you just want a simple day where you can just throw together a salad and pull that lasagna out of the freezer and you're ready to go. You're already going through the work of creating lasagna. So you might as well just grab an extra pan, make two at one time, and then throw the extra one in the freezer. And now you've got a simple meal already prepped, ready to go. And you don't have to dirty more dishes to create that second pan. So those are the things that you're kind of looking at doing. You can also make soup. We love doing soup where we'll make a batch of soup, but we actually make a really big batch of soup because then we know that we can eat the soup tonight and then we can either have it left over tomorrow or again, we can the extra in the freezer and then all we have to do is thaw it and heat it up when it comes time to have a quick dinner some other night. So this is just a really easy way to have dinners on hand and make meal planning a little bit easier when you're in the week and you're just doubling up on protein or you're doubling up on rice or anything like that, that you're already going through the work of making it. Just make extra, and then it makes a future meal much easier and quicker to throw together. So, those are your four quick tips to make meal planning easier, especially when you can't decide on dinner. This is just a stressful a stressful piece of our lives, but we all need to eat. We need to feed ourselves and our families consistently. So any way that we can simplify this routine and make it more enjoyable, then we want to do that. And this is a way that I have been able to do it for our family, and I hope this is helpful for you too. So I will recap those really quickly for you so that you have those. Number 1 is to create a favorites list. Number 2 is to use a wall calendar to create your meal plan. Number 3 is to pick a meal planning day to plan for the week ahead so you're not planning the night of. And number 4 is to double up wherever you can. Double up your ingredients that you're making, the proteins that you're making, or even the actual meal and throw them in the freezer for quick go-to meals and on-hand meals later on in the week or the month. So I hope that was super helpful for you and that you are kind of brainstorming some ways that you can make meal planning easier for you and your family. If you are loving the show, I would love to hear from you. You can leave a rating or review right in your podcast app. I read all of them and they just make my heart so happy when I get to see what you're loving about the show and how it's making a difference in your life. So if you have not done that, I would appreciate if you go and leave a rating or review, and I will catch you back here on the next episode. Take care.